All right, webinar is live. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Welcome to everyone who is joining in. We're going to give an opportunity for people to come in, get settled. You probably have enough time to refill that coffee that hopefully you're still nursing on this morning. I like my coffee to last me through lunch, so maybe you're the same. Good morning, good morning. Again, we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Powers, I'm a little disappointed you don't have our music going this morning, although with some of your selections recently, I don't know, maybe it's a good thing.
No, they've been great selections. What are you talking about?
She had an unedited version of a song and it had an inappropriate word.
Oh, I'm not thinking of that one. I'm thinking of all the ones that I taught down in Chile. And I thought I've met my soulmate. Hey, I'm gonna switch computers, Travis.
Profe, that's great. You have probably about 15 minutes or so until you present. So that's
okay, great. Perfecto. I'm gonna get on the one where I can hear you better.
Okay, bien.
Hasta luego.
Adios. Okay, with that, we're not saying adios to all of our attendees that are here and our panelists that we have here with us. And instead, we're saying hola and welcome. We are glad to be here on this Friday, March 19th, the first official Friday under our hybrid schedule. So I know when Angela jumped on, she's like, I can't believe it's Friday. And I felt the same. The week has flown by. Let me take over your screens here for a minute and share with you. Let's make sure. Sometimes I've been having issues with my screen share here. Hopefully you can see my screen here, but just a real quick overview of what we're going to be covering this morning. We have a new staff member that we are thrilled to introduce you to. So that's going to happen in just a minute. Debbie Levy, who is our new College and Career Center advisor. And then we're going to have an opportunity to hear from 3 of our departments, and our amazing department chairs are going to share out those reports. And then we have a really great opportunity to get a budget update from our Superintendent Dr. Nickerson in partnership with LPIE, and learn about the ways in which LPIE benefits the Acalanes High School community, and also just the essential component of LPIE supporting the AUHSD district with their generous support. And then we'll close just doing a quick check-in on hybrid. I'll share a few pictures, a few updates, and a few reminders of what we've learned so far this week. And that'll be our morning. But before we do anything else, we always have to start with our current meme of the month. And I threw this on here because I think this is how we all felt this week. It says at the top, when a teacher is asked to reflect on their time during distance learning, and then it has a Michael Scott quote, which is just always, always appropriate. I knew exactly what to do, but in a much more real sense, I had no idea what to do. And I think that is how a lot of us felt as we started this hybrid week, and where it was like, we knew what we were doing, and then it started, and you're like, I actually didn't know what I didn't know, and now I do know. So I thought that this current meme of the month was appropriate. I want to turn the audio over here to Miss Debbie Levy, who will do a quick introduction of herself. So Debbie, welcome. We are thrilled to have you joining the AHS team as our College and Career Advisor.
Hi there. I'm really excited about working with all of your students. I've been actively involved in education as a credentialed high school English teacher. I've been working in college counseling basically for my entire career. Personally, I've taught the ACT and the SAT and have helped students prepare for AP exams as an instructor. I've guided hundreds of high school students with the entire college essay writing and application process. Basically, from community college to Ivy League, there's a path for everyone, and I'm super excited to work with your students. On a personal level, I'm committed to student success. I'm a really big proponent of active volunteerism, community spirit, and involvement. Next week, I'm going to be sending out introductory messages, tips, reminders to all students from freshmen to seniors. I'll be sending regular newsletters to all families in all grades. I really want students to know that the College and Career Center is a great place to explore summer programs, job opportunities, meet with college admissions officers, become familiar with Naviance, create college lists, and relax. Students will have academy opportunities to meet with me in small groups. I'll be working by Zoom with students and families who prefer that option. Basically, I'm available to anyone in all formats, in person, small groups, or by Zoom. And really, I want all of you to know I'm a strong advocate for ensuring that students build resilience, pursue their passions during high school and beyond. And I look forward to joining the Dialogue in the fall for a deeper dive into how I can help support your children. That's it for now.
Awesome. Yeah, Debbie, thank you and welcome. Again, we're just so thrilled to have you joining our team. And I have to say, anytime you have a mid-year leave, it always is nerve-wracking as an administrator. And I'm sure from a community perspective as well on how are we going to find a qualified candidate that is going to be a fit for our school. And we just feel like we scored with you. And so we are so thrilled to have you in the College and Career Center. We're thrilled for our students to get to meet you and work with you. And it's perfect timing with our launch of our hybrid schedule. So I know you've already talked a lot about trying to get your center open for academies to work with some juniors. And we're thrilled to have you bring your expertise to our school and to our community. So
thanks for the nice welcome. I'm hopping off to get busy here and get organized, and I can't wait to catch up later with all of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's great. All right. Thanks, Debbie. With that, we should have our department chairs who are going to be joining here in any minute, but I'm going to jump to some of our hybrid updates while we wait for those chairs to come in, and then that way we can quickly pivot when they do get here. They're in the middle of teaching classes, so it was like getting subs and getting them in front of the Zoom for that to happen as well. I want to give a few hybrid updates and reminders. Again, let me take over your screens. So it's been a great launch to our hybrid schedule. Are you guys seeing? You're not seeing anything, huh? Dang it. Hold on 1 minute. Let's try one more time. Let me see if I can get this to work. You know what, Mr. Plant, it's doing that thing again. Let me share with you so you can share some screens. For sure. I just had a few pictures that I wanted you to see, but while I pause the share with Mr. Plant here, a few updates about hybrid and some reminders of how it's going. The first is I've had some questions and about subs and the sub situation with hybrid and what that looks like. First off, it has been a heavy week of subs as we've had many of our staff members on their second shot of the vaccine, which is really great news as more and more people are getting vaccinated. However, some of the side effects from the vaccine have hit our staff members, and that's created the need for some additional subs during this first week, which is always hard when it's a launch and when it's that first week. A couple points of interest on that. The first is there's really sort of like there's two responses of what can happen. One is that the teacher is either able to teach remotely from home, or the teacher is sick and out and not able to teach. We really see that there's only one option where a teacher would be able to teach remotely, and that is if the teacher is quarantined due to symptoms or exposure to COVID. In that case, we have classroom supervisors who operate as subs that have been trained and equipped to come into the classroom and are able to have those teachers teach remotely. We have a handful of teachers. I was going to show you a picture who.
Travis, I'm ready to, if you can enable screen share, I have the slideshow ready. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, we have a handful of teachers who, so Mike, you should be able to share now, who, as discussed, for whatever medical reasons, might be out through spring break. And so that's currently what's happening right now. So Mike, if you click to the next screen, go one more. So this is an example of what I wanted to share. Nope, go back. This is an example of what I wanted to share here. So this is one of our math classes. We have a teacher who, until she's fully vaccinated, isn't able to, she's higher risk and isn't able to come in and teach from the classroom. She has a clearance date of coming back after spring break. So this is an example of a classroom supervisor who's operating as a sub in front of the classroom, is able to operate the technology so that that classroom teacher is able to remote teach from home and then engage with the students in that capacity. It was actually really dynamic to be in that classroom and see how she's able to engage with the class. They were still able to raise hands and ask questions specifically with that classroom supervisor, who's then able to move the iPad around to engage with that teacher while she's being displayed on the screen there. So that's an example of a teacher who's doing remote teaching. And again, we only see that happening in the event that a teacher is quarantined due to either symptoms of COVID or exposure to COVID. Man, there's all kinds of distractions going on here. Mike, if you click to the next slide, we outline where there's no remote teaching. We have a sub that's in there. In that case, so this is coming up for some of our teachers who are having reactions to the second vaccine. In that event, we have those teachers know, just like they would normally create sub plans, they're creating asynchronous assignments through Canvas that the students will do whether they are in person or remote, regardless of the day. So that will be for all cohorts A, B, AC, and BC. That would be those, they would do asynchronous assignments. The sub would not be facilitating a call in from the teacher to teach remotely from home, but will be in there to monitor the classroom and help take attendance. So that's sort of the two responses there to the sub situation. We anticipate over the course of probably next week, we'll probably have, again, a few hits with the second round of the vaccine, but after that, most of our staff has been vaccinated, and we're excited to get moving forward with that. The other update, or I guess really more of a reminder about our hybrid schedule, and Mike, if you click to that next slide, is about academy, and sorry, that should say academic support. We've talked about this a couple times now on during a Dawn's dialogue, but we have two places for our students to receive intervention and academic support. One is for our in-person students, and that is our cohort A and B students. We have our academy period. It's offered every day, and they flop between lunch and academy depending on their grade level. Those students are required to sign up for academy on Mondays before 3 o'clock, and they sign up for the entire week. This gives us an opportunity to see what students haven't signed up, and more specifically, where we might need to create some additional space for students who, if other academies are filled. It's only for our in-person students, and they do have to sign up in advance. So far, this has been relatively smooth, but every day we've had a handful of students who haven't signed up for academy, and then they go to one of their teachers for academy, and that place is already full with the classroom max that's in place based off of our COVID protocols. So as parents, encouraging your students to sign up for academy on Mondays will really help them to plan accordingly for the rest of the week. For our cohort AC and BC students, those students have 3 optional office hours that they can attend over the course of the week. 2 of them are on Mondays. And Mike, if you go ahead and click, sorry, Mike, to make you do
absolutely fine.
But if you go ahead and click, this is what's outlined on our website. It's right there on the front page, and it's been shared with students multiple times. But this is our academy outline. It looks complicated just because there's a lot of information on there, but it's really not. So Mike, if you do like a simple highlight of a teacher, like I'm seeing Tom McNamara.
Tom Mac, right.
He is a science teacher on our campus. You can see that during 11:30 to 12 on Tuesday and Wednesday, he has Academy First for 11th and 12th graders, because 11th and 12th graders have Academy First. And then on Thursday, Friday, he has Academy Second for 9th and 10th graders. So students are able to see when Academy periods are being offered for their teachers. And if you're an AC or BC student, you can see that he's available on Mondays from 2 to 3 to help for office hours. He will always be available during that hour for students. And then it's optional if he's available for those other optional hours.
Yes.
So that's how students can help monitor and seek support for their learning under this hybrid schedule and what that looks like. Again, it's really important that students sign up through Teach More for any in-person student for Academy. For the office hours, they don't have to do that. All right, that's great. I'm trying to see, it looks like one of our department chairs is here. It's not Joyce Larson, it's actually Joe Scotland. But I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Joe Scotland. Mike, you can stop sharing. Okay. And we'll have Joe talk to us about our social science department update. So Joe, take it away.
Okay, sorry I was a little late. And I'm not sure why it says Joyce Larson. I signed in as me, but whatever. So I've got two things actually to talk to you about. The first one, the bigger thing, has to do with the choices for next year and in social studies department. So we have, I don't really want to call them paths, but we have sort of two distinct avenues, let's say. Both are a la carte avenues, so that every year you can pick and choose. You can get off one avenue and move to the other avenue in theory. In practice, if you move to an AP course actually is more rigorous, and in terms of reading and in terms of skill level and in terms of pace and workload and what the students get used to, that's something to consider if you jump from one path, shall we say, to the other path. But for example, in my AP comparative government class, which I teach to seniors, I have about anywhere from 12 to 15% of the students that have never taken an AP social studies class before. So they chose to take AP in senior year, and that really doesn't affect them. It might take them a little longer at the beginning just to get used to the pacing and the workload, but they're not at a disadvantage substantively. But to just give you an idea of what is available to you, from first year to sophomore year, you have a choice of either contemporary issues and public policy, or the AP path, which is AP European history. In junior year, you have a choice between either a non-AP US history course, which covers a slightly less time period, and the AP US history course, which covers what the College Board has required, which is pre-Columbian, before the Revolutionary War, all the way up through present time. Whereas the regular course, it's not quite that long a period of time. And then in senior year, you've actually got a little bit more of a choice. You can either choose regular government and economics, one semester of government, one semester of economics, not necessarily in that order. It could be economics first and then government. Or if you take the AP path, which is what I teach, it is government and economics combined with the AP course, which itself is only a semester long. And that covers 6 different countries and their public policy and international and the relationships of their political institutions. And you also have, additionally, the choice of possibly taking psychology. And so that's another choice that you can make. That's an elective course in the social studies. So those are the choices that you have here for social studies for next year. I'm going to pause to see if there are any questions.
No, I think it's great, Joe. That was a clear outline. I know just a couple things. Can you speak a little bit to some of the support? I know you were going to talk about the writing tutor program and and some of the support for students.
Yeah, so and actually I wanted to take that opportunity to thank LPIE for that. So the LPIE has very generously funded the writing program at this school for social studies. That's something that's near and dear to my heart as a former attorney. Writing communication, written communication is incredibly important. The LPIE funding has focused on first year and junior year. And even during the pandemic, the funding for the writing tutors and the writing tutors were able to work with first year and junior classes on an essay in the fall and an essay in the spring, and actually give them feedback on not one, not two, really, but 3 different drafts that they've gone through. And that enables the students to work a little bit and dive a little bit deeper into the writing process, and allowing the social studies teacher to move on with content. Eventually, the social studies teacher is the one that will grade the paper, comment on the paper, but they've been working with the writing tutors to explain exactly what they want to see in the process and what they want to see in the paper. It's all been online. We mindful of the fact that we have reduced funding. We've reduced the face-to-face contacts that we've had. Obviously, we can't have any face-to-face contact really, but through Zoom, we have targeted certain students that need maybe just a little bit more help, and we still give them face-to-face contact. But most of the contact that the students have gotten is through very extensive written commentary on their drafts. We've eliminated LPIE writing tutor use during academy, and instead we've replaced it with peer tutors. So we've brought peer tutors in during academy to work with students that we've tagged that might need a little bit more help with the writing process. Did that address what you wanted?
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Joe. I really appreciate that. And I think the only question that I saw come in the chat was around where parents can access the outline of the courses that you kind of highlighted. So I know there's a couple places online, and I believe that the open house sort of outline is still up there, correct?
Yeah, I believe it's still up there, and of course all the teachers sort of went a little bit more in depth as to what their courses contain, and some of the expectations in terms of reading level, in terms of writing expectations for the individual courses. Obviously, our courses, unlike let's say math perhaps or foreign language, aren't as connected, and so those expectations will change depending upon the course.
Okay, great.
Sure.
Thanks, Ms. Shelton.
Sure.
Mr. Plant, Ms. Powers, I don't think anything else came in, correct?
The only other question was a little bit about how the students sign up for the writing project, but I believe that's something that happens organically in class. Am I right about that, Joe?
Yes, absolutely. So the teacher has an essay in mind. They assign the essay. The teacher the week before works with the writing tutors to basically outline exactly what their expectations are and what they want to see. And then once the first drafts come in, the students are assigned by the writing tutors to individual tutors, which, by the way, they can communicate at any time if they've got questions about things, which is the beauty of Zoom. I mean, if you want to look for a silver lining in Zoom, at any point when they're working on a paper, they can actually contact on the writing tutor and get feedback, maybe not immediate, but feedback from the tutor as to, what do you mean by this? I didn't exactly get what you meant by this correction. And so that's been very, very helpful. But that's all done by the teacher and also by the writing tutor in terms of the assignment.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Scotland. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
All right,
Bye.
I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our 2 English co-chairs, Kathy Chalicombe and Heller Stanton. So take it away.
Hi. All right, I think I'll go first because I think Ms. Chalicombe is going to stay after because she is also a French teacher. So I think she's going to kind of begin the world language part, right? So hi, I'm Heller Stanton. I'm actually in the classroom right now with my LD class that I would show you using groups with the iPad on one of them. It's pretty cool. And that is actually one of the sort of lesser known English options in a sense is our ELD program, which is the English Language Development Program that we have here for kids that need those services. You are automatically put in, but you can also opt in. So I know that it is an option out there. English, we have English 9 for freshmen, which is everybody takes it, not too many options. Same with sophomore English, not too many options. Everybody takes English 9 and 10. It's when we get to the junior year when we have some selections. And actually Ms. Chalicombe is going to talk about that in a second. And then I'm going to skip up to the senior year, which is where we have something called the selections. And those are a little bit more thematic based, always, of course, keeping our English skills in mind, but they are classes that kids can choose based on their interest. For the past couple of years, we have run 2 of them. One is called The Mysterious, Grotesque, and Fantastic, which is actually one that I teach, which we focus on just that, mystery novels, you know, things, monsters, Frankenstein. We kind of trace the postmodern world in the uncanny. We do an unsolved mysteries research paper, all those kinds of things. And then we have another one that we've run for a couple of years that's called Rebels, Outcasts, and Iconoclasts, which is, again, just that, where we talk about, they read novels about a lot of times young adults that have had to maybe become a rebel to stand up for what they believe is right, or things that they believe in. This year we have just offered a class called Deconstructing Race, and we're working on the sort of final course of study for that right now. But that is one that has ran last year at Marimani and maybe the last 2 years at Marimani. And we're going to offer it perhaps next year. It was on the course selection for kids. Then of course we have AP Literature, which is our senior year AP course. And AP Lit is, you know, kind of your typical AP class. It closely mirrors the College Board, just like our new junior AP class. It's literature. Again, it's sort of the college-based literature. I don't want to say it's a survey class, but it is your AP Literature class. Before I give it over to Ms. Chalicombe about our junior selections, we do have a couple of electives in the English department. We have our blueprint course, which Ms. Chalicombe can talk about in a couple minutes here. And then we also have a creative writing course that we have here, creative writing / public speaking, that is also on the course selection. And these are, of course, English classes that are in addition to, it's not that you can take a creative writing instead of junior English or senior English. It's for those kids that love English or that are really creative and they need that sort of creative writing outlet. So those are kind of the senior selections, a couple of the electives, and then our kind of singleton ELD class that is run through the English department also.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Stanton. And I know, Ms. Chalicombe, you're going to share a little bit more about the junior year. Part of the English selectives, the junior year is, it's all based off of student signups. So it depends on what students are interested that year will determine what selectives we run for that senior year. So I'll turn it over to Ms.
And that's been really great where the kids know that they affect, you know, if the course runs or not, because it is more kids, it's more student centered. You know, if a lot of kids really want the Rebels class, then we make sure, you know, as much as we can that they can get their first choice, which is, you know, something that was never really offered before. But as seniors, I teach the mystery class, and I've seen in the last 2 years, because I used to teach a regular senior class, but that buy-in is really important for seniors to kind of keep them motivated throughout the whole year and to, you know, keep it going until May, because they picked it, they're invested, it's a topic that they like, or are at least interested in. And I think it's been a really great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ms. Stanton. All right, Ms. Chalicombe.
So I moved myself because we were having sound issues in the other room. So I'm in the room that has a refrigerator. So that's why I keep putting because people come in. All right. So yes, I'm Mrs. Chalicombe, and just discussing right away filling in on what happens at the junior level. That's the first opportunity that kids have of a choice. You know, a freshman and sophomore level, there are no options in the English department. We want to give everybody sort of the same sort of foundation. And then junior level, they have regular junior, all of the junior classes are going to be primarily American Lit. And so we do American literature as hopefully my internet connection says it's unstable. Hopefully it will not, I won't leave. But we do American literature and the American story through literature. And that includes, of course, nonfiction as well. We have two other options besides the college prep junior level. One is honors English, which is, I'd say, a literature-based, especially fiction-based course that has, really ups the ante on challenging text, as well as doing a lot of process essays, longer essays, and that is now we have added to that the AP language and composition. AP language and composition, right, Heller? That's the official title of that course.
Yes,
and
that's the title.
Heller actually teaches that class. And that is new to us. This is the first year that we've had this. And it does tend to, a lot of it is talking about rhetoric and the usage of rhetoric and argumentation in writing. Much of it is also American Lit, although I'm sure there are a couple of things that you will do sometimes because you're talking about rhetoric that are not. And it is obviously an AP class, so there is a test in the spring that they prepare for. But I know that Heller is using this great textbook that has really wonderful passages, and AP Lang is a little bit different. The AP classes are a little bit different because a lot of it is deep reading of shorter pieces. And so there'll be passages perhaps from a novel. It will be poetry that you read deeply. It will be maybe parts of either a short story or a speech or an essay that is a smaller piece, for instance, than a full-out novel. And I know that you also read novels, right? But a lot of the work really is close reading, looking at writer intent, how a writer uses language to express what they're trying to express, and recognizing that. So it's not as much, often in English classes, we talk a lot about theme, and this is much more about what a writer does, the mechanics of what a writer does. And of course, that's very good for them to develop their writing skills as well.
Yeah,
I wanted to address also some of the changes that have been happening in the curriculum here and throughout the district, and that we are diversifying what we are reading, really making an effort to be much more inclusive of the many voices in literature. Say it again, Heller. Oh, I don't know what she said. So, but that we are. Can you hear me? Okay. Travis, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Your screen is frozen,
Oh,
but
am I gone?
you're coming through.
So I'm worried that you cannot hear me. Mike, can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. But my voice continues. Okay, well, yeah, that is good. As an older person, sometimes it's nice to know that your screen is frozen. because we're aging so quickly. So anyway, but the diversification of our literature is really important to us. And we have, obviously, especially at the junior level, we're really using a lot of voices that are various African-American, female voices, other minority voices. And then we are doing so on an international global scale as well. And that will, of course, include deconstructing race. I'm going to stop talking since it seems that I'm having troubles. And Heller, you want to pick up anything? I was going to talk about the assessments that we're doing under these circumstances. Do you want to pick that up?
Sure, yes.
I'm done.
That's always, I know in distance learning, a lot of people are concerned about assessments. And I think in the English department, we have it a little bit easier because a lot of our assessments are writings. But the good thing is that it's really allowed us to really focus on revision and to look at, you know, especially Kathy said that I teach the AP Lang. So it's a lot of, again, like rhetorical analysis, argumentative stuff. So where did you get this? Let's look at where you got it. Let's go back and kind of be able to revise and to make sure that this is really what you want to say. So assessments like that, I think for English have moved primarily to writing, which is also, I think, there's more equity there because we know that, you know, we've got kids at home, we've got kids in class, and I know that that's sometimes an issue of, you know, who has access to what, but when it's a writing assignment, everybody has the same access to everything. It's how you put your thoughts on paper. And so I think that those types of assessments probably will continue even after distance learning. Was there any other questions or anything that you needed us to go over?
No, I think that's great. Kathy, your face is moving again. So I'm glad that you're unfrozen and really appreciate both of your time and the in-depth sort of share of the department and the work that you're doing as a department, which is really not only impressive, but essential as we're supporting our students and continuing to move forward. So thank you both, Ms. Stanton and Ms. Chalicombe. And I'm going to go ahead and I know Ms. Stanton is going back to teaching her students there. And I'm going to turn it over to Prof. Goff, who can share with us about the World Language Department.
I would love to. I just want to, Kathy, are you hanging out here? Okay, so she's going to let me talk. Okay, so.
I'm going to move on.
Okay, but chime in if you want to. So I'm a Spanish teacher at Acalanes. Kathy is a French teacher. And so the first thing is we teach levels 1 through 5 of Mandarin, French, and Spanish. We offer a complete program. Yes, the majority of students take 1A, 1B in their intermediate school, usually Stanley, and go into level 2 as a freshman. But that's not always the case. But if they do go in, the typical is to go in at level 2, take level 3 as a sophomore, and at least 3 years, most students do, not just because of the UC's desire to see that, but just so that they can feel that they can get by in the language. That's the idea after level 3. And then to really be conversant, students will go on, and just because they love the culture, students will go on and take level 4, many of them as a junior, and then level 5 AP. Having said that, we do have students that don't get started with it, or for whatever reason, they just want to take level 1 their freshman year. So we offer that in each of the languages, and we have had success. That is definitely a possibility too for students who really want to become conversant in the language. That is okay. We often do have seniors in level 4 who take the AP, even though they're not in the AP course, and pass it. Or maybe they don't take the AP, but they go on and they take the language in college as well. So there are lots of paths, lots of ways that students can do it. And we've had to, I mean, obviously though, when I have students who are juniors and say, well, then I can take a test, I say, yeah, but we have a very good rate. In fact, I don't want to jinx myself, but all the Spanish 4 students have passed the AP that just took it after Spanish 4. But now I shouldn't say that, because now I'm going to be proven wrong. But having said that, there are many more students who get 5. You know, our students pass, but they do better, of course, after they've had another year with Senor Shaw, and he's got a, you know, phenomenal number of 5s. And Kathy, you know, same thing. She would say the same thing about French, right? That of course, if they can get that extra year in where they're actually studying VAP test before they take it, that's a great goal. So anyway, that's a little bit about our program. We have placement tests in the spring for students who are not coming from our feeder schools and are not sure, but they may have had some language, they have some background in it, so they're not sure which level they should be in. And this is really encouraged. Please let parents know that the placement test is a win-win, because sometimes I think that parents feel like, well, they don't want their child to have to take it in the spring, and what if their child doesn't do well, but they really know their child should be in a certain level. The French, Spanish, and Mandarin teachers have been teaching for many, many years, you know, decades. They know the curriculum and really know how the student will do with the preparation that they have and what level they should be in if they're not going to do any kind of extra review. And we are very good in that placement test about giving feedback. So we will maybe say a student should be in level 1, or we'll say a student should be in level 2, but we may also say level 2 with reservations. If we know that student wants to be in level 2, but we have reservations about it, and we will list always detailed, you know, what were the student's strengths, what would they need to work on to be successful at the next level. So it's really something that the families should want to do and make sure their kid gets there, because they will get then an email with lots of really good information about how to be prepared for that level that the student is going into.
Yeah, I was going to add that this is an issue, and maybe I'm freezing up again and you're just hearing me. Who knows? But
I hear you.
That often maybe their native language is, you know, in my case, French. Their native language is French, and I say, well, you know, my native language is English, but I still do things, you know, I don't automatically consider myself ready for college to be an English major. That there's a lot that we learn about vocabulary, about writing, reading difficult texts. That's all part of those upper division language classes. And then I think the other part of it is that when you have really young kids, I've had freshmen and sophomores that really want to be in that advanced level. And it is, you know, especially at the AP level, we're talking about college level textbooks. Right. And sometimes those kids are not quite ready for those college level textbooks. So while I don't mean to suggest that a placement test it isn't something that's important for them to do, I do think that they also are happier when they're with a class that's kids that are their age, or at least curriculum that they can understand. And that's right. Elizabeth is frozen.
Yeah, and we
so
all
that's,
know
I think that's my input there. And sign up for French.
Sorry. No, and we take that into consideration too, and we give feedback on that. So that you parents know levels 1 and 2, for example, they do topics that are very neutral, very, your basic colors and food and house and that kind of stuff. And they do dialogues, a lot of little dialogues and very short paragraph writings. By level 3, they're doing long paragraphs. They analyze short stories. They analyze pieces of art. And by level 4, they have to write argumentative essays. And their language teachers also have English degrees, English masters. I mean, so it's in world language. We're actually buttressing the learning that's going on in English classes, and the students have to analyze movies, analyze poems, and have a good thesis and do the whole, topic sentence and pieces of evidence and varying their sentence structure, and it gets very sophisticated. So that is something also to be thinking about. It really is, more appropriate for students when they've already, learned how to write a paragraph, a good paragraph, in their first language before they're jumping into essays. It's academic. What I would say about the World Language Program is that it is an elective, but it is an academic elective. And by AP, well, also there's a lot of cultural input too, and not just from, Mexico or Spain, but from a lot of different countries. And cultural awareness and cultural tolerance is something that we are plugging in at every level. And levels 1 and 2, it's more just the simple things like the major holidays and foods and geography. But when you get to the advanced levels, you're talking about famous leaders and famous writers and why they were important and why they were polemic and things like this. And there's debate. In level 5, they are getting ready for the AP. And as Kathy can attest, in the AP, it's if your students have studied for an SAT, or if you took a GRE, you'll remember the reading comprehension questions often are very difficult. You might think, well, is it this one that is supposed to be the answer, or is this one the answer? No, there's one that's a better answer in reading comprehension. And that stuff is tricky, and they're practicing that in another language. So that's just a little bit to give you an idea of AP, the AP level. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah,
So
perfect.
I want,
So I
yes.
know we have about like 30 more seconds.
Okay.
And so is there any last minute thing to highlight before we jump?
Well, I just wanted to say, so a lot of the programs that are great enrichment programs, language enrichment programs that are out there, I think of them more as enrichment, but not to try to jump ahead necessarily. So I would just keep that in mind in the community, like a lot of those programs that are out there. I know you know what I'm talking about. And last, I want to just thank LPIE and the parents. We're so bummed that we're not going on our field trips and cutting papel picado and origami and things like that this year, but we know that we will be, and we really thank you for everything that you have done for us.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Profe, for sharing. And I think my one of my main takeaways from just hearing you share is just a reminder of your passion, energy, and enthusiasm about the World Language Department and the benefit that it brings to our students. And so appreciate not only the in-depth sort of share out about your department and what it looks like, across the levels, but more so just speaking into that value of taking a world language and how it extends not only to other curricular areas, but just to the global perspective that we want to prepare our students for. So thank you, Profe, for
citizens. I don't think I mentioned the placement test dates. It's April 6th and 7th after school. I should have said
great.
that.
And we'll make sure that those are plugged in our daily dawn. So thanks, Profe. Appreciate that.
Bye.
All right, adios. And I want to give a special welcome. We have some really special guests with us today. So we have our Superintendent, Dr. John Nickerson, and then Beth Goldberg, who is the Executive Director of LPIE, and Danielle Gallagher, who is the incoming president, right? Danielle, Vice President now, incoming president next year, right? Okay, great. Well, welcome. I'm going to turn the floor over to the three of you. So Beth, I know you have some slides that you want to share, and Dr. Nickerson is going to kind of highlight for us our current state of budget.
Yeah, Thank you so much, Travis. And while Beth is pulling up our slides, I just want to say thanks to you, to APC, and the entire Acalanes community this year for supporting LPIE in an incredibly trying year. I loved hearing what's going on in the classrooms, and it's just incredible. And as a fellow Dawn, an alumni myself, really excited to be here talking to the Acalanes community today. So the reason that LPIE wanted to do these in the know type presentations, and we are doing these to all the 6 schools in Lafayette that LPIE supports, is that we have heard you loud and clear the questions of, in this year of distance learning and now hybrid, yay for our students being back on campus this week. I loved seeing that. But we have heard loud and clear the questions from the community of what is LPIE supporting. And so what we wanted to do is do these presentations to be very informative of what LPIE supports, you know, in the classrooms this year. I also want to extend a huge thank you to Dr. Nickerson for taking time out of his very busy week and day, and how all the evenings that he's put in for joining us today, because education and funding in California is extremely complicated. And the more we talk about it and can educate our community about it, the more we realize how important local community support is. And with that, I'd love to turn it over first to Dr. Nickerson to talk through some education funding.
So good morning, everybody. And as Danielle said, California funding is really complicated, and the funding in our district or our partner districts, like Lafayette School District, is complicated, and it's not often represented in kind of the regular media reports, just because of the way funding flows and flows to particular demographics. And so our districts kind of continue to limp along in perpetual crisis, and only can make things work because of our local support of LPIE and for our district, our other foundations and our other communities, and the local parcel tax. The funding that's coming from the state is absolutely inadequate, and to offer the education that our students deserve. And that's for a few reasons. In California, California is a relatively high tax state. The revenues coming into California on a per person basis are not low, but California has a lot of social interests. Healthcare is a priority in our state. Kind of social programs for those less fortunate are a priority in this state. And, prisons are expensive in our state. So California also has what's called Prop 98, which was passed about 30 years ago. And it was intended, when it first went into law, to secure a base amount of funding for our schools. About 40% of the state dollars to go towards our schools. But what's happened over time, that base amount of money has become a ceiling. And because of all the interests in California, all the social interests, the funding for schools has not gone above that 40%. And so what we have is, back in as late as the 70s, before Prop 13, which I think many of you are familiar with, California was the golden state for schools. Everybody was looking at our schools for programs and how they were running. And with before Prop 13, we were always funded like top 5 in the country out of all the states for K-12 education. After Prop 13, there was a slow fall. And until recently, California was number 48, number 49, number 50, depending on who was calculating and measuring. More recently, California has moved up to about 40. But during that increase, California also put in place the local control funding formula starting in 2013. And the local control funding formula is, from a policy standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. It puts more dollars into school districts that have, there's 3 targeted groups: low income families, English learners, and foster youth homeless. And so districts that have a higher percentage of those students receive proportionately much more funding. So while California recently has moved up to more like 40th, 35 to 40, depending on the measure, compared to all the 50 states in terms of funding, that's the average. And if you look at school districts like ours and Lafayette, it's rock bottom for state funding. It would be on the national average would be still be number 50, because California made the decision to move more money to students who need it more. Again, a good decision, but really tough on our communities. So again, because of some of our local funding, we make things work and we're able to offer a high quality education, but it's not because of state funding. We receive very little federal funding, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, as well as some of the aid packages coming through. Our high school district, because the state allocation is so low, we're actually have become a basic aid district around 2013, and I'll talk about that in a couple slides forward. We have a structural deficit. Our expenses are growing faster than new revenue coming in. And as I mentioned, local support is absolutely critical. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Next slide. So we are a basic aid or a community funded district. And what that means is the state sets a funding amount, and that is the LCFF funding level. And for most districts, the property tax provides, local property tax provides part of that money, and schools get roughly half of the local property tax. So that provides part of that money. And then the state fills in the rest with their guarantee. And so that would be the bucket on the left with state aid coming in. So if that bucket is so small because of your LCFF level, or if your property tax is so high, which actually is not the case in this community, you get your local property tax might exceed the LCFF funding level, and you get to keep the extra, which is a positive. So we are considered community funding, meaning our local school share of local property taxes exceed the LCFF funding level, and we get to keep the extra, which is a good thing. So you can go to the next slide. But I'll mention that not all school districts that are basic aid or community funded are doing extraordinarily well. So here are the high school districts in the Bay Area. So a high school district is just focused on high school. Running a high school is more expensive than an elementary school because of the elective program, the specialties, things like that, the activities. So if you look at us, we're funded at, and this is 18-19 data, which is the most recent that's available for comparing districts. So it is 2 years stale, but not too much has changed since that time. So if you look at this, the LCFF level of funding is the blue, and ours is relatively low, again, because of our demographic. We have fewer English learners, fewer low income households. And then the red area is the overflow. So that would be the extra dollars beyond the LCFF. So it's great that we have those. But when you compare it to other districts, we're much lower. When you compare it to other states, say a New York or an Illinois, where they're funding between 20 and 25,000 per student, it's very different. So that little red is not a lot for us, that overflow. Whereas if you look at San Mateo, Mountain View, Sequoia Union, you see those large red swaths. Those are extra dollars per student because of local property taxes. And you might say, you pay a lot in property tax. And many of you do. But in our community, we have a lot of households that are still protected by Prop 13. So maybe the house is a $2 million house, but because the family bought it in 1975, it's protected by Prop 13. So they're paying taxes much lower than somebody who just moved in next door last year. And so because of the nature of that, while some people in our community are paying really high property taxes, not everybody is. So it's great that we're community funded, but we're not funded at like other levels. I think it is worth noting that the orange and the kind of turquoise, the local parcel tax, and the turquoise, which is locally, such as donations, such as LPIE, those help a lot, but it still keeps us much lower than many of the high schools that we compete with. Many of the high schools that our students are competing against to get into college. Many of the high schools that are able to somehow pull together the resources and provide extra opportunities for the kids. So those LPIE dollars are essential. Next slide. So just a couple notes. We don't have a great budget right now. We have a current budget deficit of about $1 million. We are projected to have a deficit in the coming years. And right now we have a reserve of about 16%. And in our outgoing years, it drops by about 2 or 3% a year. That's our budget deficit. And it will drop. At a certain point, we're going to have problems where we need to cut programs. The other thing that's helping us stay afloat is the local foundation support like LPIE. And that allows us to keep the elective programs that would rival any of those other high schools that high school districts I showed, as well as any private schools around, and our robust support services. We have local support that makes up about 23%. So that's parcel tax, foundations, other parental support. The federal and state COVID aid packages for K-12, again, are weighted heavily towards lower income populations and targeted groups. Again, from a policy standpoint, you can't dispute that. Those communities are hit harder by the COVID crisis. But when you see, for the example, the recent COVID aid package that came from the federal government, that's bringing about $15 billion to California K-12 schools. That is windfall money. That's a huge amount of money for California K-12 students. The average amount for districts is about $2,300 per student coming to the district. That's the average amount. We're going to get less than $200 per student. So that gives you a sense of the scope. So when you see about these big dollars coming to schools, we're going to get, I think it's like $180 per student, which is great. And that will be $1 million that is really going to help us bring into some of the programs that we need to address the challenges ahead. But we are not getting windfall dollars like most districts with a different demographic. Reason being, the federal dollars coming, they're being allocated based on Title I. Title I is a federal entitlement that goes towards low-income students. We don't have a lot of those. And so those dollars are going to other districts that have large amounts of those students. And so that's something to keep in mind as you read these headlines. And then just long-term cost pressures are part of the reason for that budget deficit. Our teachers haven't gotten an increase in salary this year. Our budget deficit doesn't show them getting an increase in the subsequent years. It's challenging times. Healthcare goes up, state pensions are going up, which are negotiated at the state level, yet we have to pay the bill. And increased student needs and special education require additional resources. So I think I'll leave it at that. That's kind of big picture, more detail than probably anybody wants to hear. But the thesis statement is our district is very poorly funded by the state and the feds, and its local support that makes things happen for our kids.
John, can I just ask you, we were in a meeting within the past month with you, and a shocking fact that you said around 100 districts or so are in this basic aid, 100 high school districts. And you had said that Akalani's is not one of the lowest, if not the lowest funded. Could you repeat that stat? Because it was pretty shocking.
Yeah, so there's about 100 high school districts in the state. So these are, you either have K-12 districts or you have a structure where you have, like we have, where there's a high school district and then partner K-8 districts. And there's about 100 high school districts in the state. And on the LCF funding formula, we are the rock bottom lowest funded with the LCFF calculation of the 100 in the state.
Yeah. Thank you. It's just a data point you would not know unless an expert like you tells us. So taking away why local support is so important. So thanks for sharing that information.
Yeah, and I think context, when you consider local support and LPIE and the parcel tax, it moves us up in towards the middle in overall funds that we have. But from the state allocation, we're dead last of that group of 100.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So leading into that, I mean, that basically explains the why for an education foundation. In fact, the most comprehensive analysis of California public education was done by Stanford University about 3 years ago now. And the stats came back that an adequate education in the state of California would cost $16,000 per student. But I think we all can agree in Lafayette, adequate is not enough for our students. We expect exceptional. And that's what our teachers and administrators are able to deliver on a much smaller per pupil basis. So it's phenomenal what is done in our classrooms, but that's just another data point. Next slide, please. So we recognize at LPIE that at the high school level, we ask $1,000. At the K-8 right now, we ask $1,300. And we work very closely with the Parents Club for their $300 ask. But we realize that's a lot of money. And we joke at LPIE that we wish we didn't exist, because that means that California is prioritizing public education. But unfortunately, as you just heard, that's not the case. So what we wanted to show you today is kind of a comprehensive comparison of other ed foundations and other, areas within California that we compare ourselves with. But besides the Ed Foundation, that is not the full picture of community support. So we also added in the parcel tax. So please note here a couple different things. The Ed Foundation ask is a per student ask, where the parcel tax, is per household. So you might have multiple students in that household, so you can't just add them together. But as you see here, the $1,000 or even $1,300 with our joint ask with APC together, that does not put us in the high end range, right? I mean, right next door, you have Piedmont at $1,930 a student, and their parcel tax is exponentially higher at a little over $6,000 with two joint taxes together. You have Hillsborough, which, $2,700 per student. So we really, we take very seriously at LPIE what we're asking of our community, and every dollar matters and every dollar makes a difference. So whether you're able to give the ask of $1,000 or $100, the more participation we can get, the better off we all are. But just wanted to show that every year we're doing an analysis of districts, surrounding districts, of what we're asking our community. Next slide, please. Over the past 10 years, you'll see it's actually LPIE's 40th anniversary this year. We were founded in 1980 by 3 local community members, but you can see our support since, the recession, coming out of the recession, 07-08, has continued to grow. Pre-pandemic, at our height, we were able to give to our 6 local public schools over $4.4 million. Last year, obviously, COVID hit in March. We were on track to even exceed that, but then life, turned upside down. But knowing that when we were budgeting this year, we knew that the pandemic would have a great effect on our community, but we did not want, our support of our schools to change. because we didn't know what this year lied ahead. So we committed to using $1 million of our reserves. That's 24% of our reserves. And that's not sustainable for years to come. We are so thankful that our board and the community had the foresight to put money away for a rainy day. And I think we could all agree it was thundering and lightning this year. So we are using $1 million. Yeah, thanks for the laugh, Mike. Thank you. Yeah, it is. It's hailing. It's been quite a year. But that is just not sustainable for years to come. Next slide, please. Overall, you might ask, the $4.3 million that we are donating to our 6 schools or giving, what are we funding? And the majority of that is people. And that's really what we want to emphasize. We fund the teachers that are interacting with your students every day. We fund the elective classes. We fund the music and the theater. And we'll really dive into the specifics at Akalani's on the next slide. So 71% specifically at Akalani's is people. And you heard some of them right before our presentation. So next slide, and please, Travis, on the next slide, jump in here since you are the Akalani's expert. But what I would love for you to take away on this is we fund 15 elective class teachers at Akalani's. What I didn't realize until I got involved in the schools is the state does not fund a 7-period day. I wish they did, right? So your student could be out at 1 o'clock. I remember when I was at Akalani's as a senior, I was like, oh, do I get to get out earlier? I thought it was the option, but the option exists because of community support, that we are able to support these 15 elective class teachers. And that gives the students choice to really figure out, to find their passion, maybe what they want to major in if they choose to continue on after high school. And that is a phenomenal, that doesn't exist in every district, that you are able to have all these elective class choices. I think funding for our wellness staff, Alan and Casey and the students, the interns in there are exceptional people. And this year, the support that the Wellness Center and staff has been able to give our students, even in a distance learning model, is exceptional. And we are so happy we are able to help provide funding for that. I don't have students at Akalani's, but I keep hearing about Catherine Walton, and I've met her and she seems phenomenal. So that's the teacher on special assignment. We're so happy to be able to fund her and the projects that she's working on the Akalani's campus. And then, supplies, whether it's choral or drama. And then you just heard the social studies teacher talking about the writing, staff and supplies. Those are things, if you can have tangible experiences for students, they will remember it, for years to come. We had a podcast with one of the science teachers at Akalani's, and he was talking about how the experiments, how he can show them versus just talking through what he's trying to learn, that it will stick with students. Another, quick reference, at Akalani's, you still have the ability that in one of the science classes, they dissect cats. And I know that happened when I was there. I personally was not a fan of it, but my good friend was. If you know Dr. Salmon, the orthodontist, his daughter, and you know what she does now? She's now a trauma surgeon in San Francisco. And I would like to think she found a passion, when she was working on that cat. So that's pretty neat, and I'm sure it does not happen every district. Blueprint, the Azure magazine, we were able, the students came last year and had this idea for this print magazine, and they presented to LPIE, and we were so happy we could fund that publication for them. Chromebooks, goes without saying, every student who needed one has access to one, which is exceptional. Next slide, please. I touched on supplies, and that is in every department. When we're working with Travis, he always emphasizes that LPIE, we are able to touch every department, which is fantastic. Library, print resources, and all the different materials in a lot of the visual and performing arts programs. World language, you heard the field trips that hopefully will, return again soon. Those experiential learning, and then of course PE, and then writing tutors for every student who is in that program. So a look to the future. What is LPIE doing to look ahead? Next slide, please. So currently, we are a little bit over $2.8 million of our goal. Remember, if you go back to that 10-year slide, we committed to fundraising $3.3 million this year with using $1 million of our reserves. So we're about $500,000 away from our fundraising goal this year, but any dollar amount over that 3.3 means less reserves that we have to use. Our current participation rate is 50%. And that's yet again, what I really want to emphasize. Any dollar amount matters and makes a difference. If we can get our participation rate up, then, you know, we don't have to constantly look at our ask of what we're asking our community. Every child receives benefits from LPIE, so we would love to get that participation number up. To give a little perspective, at the end of last year, we did end at about 62% participation. Next slide, please. I mean, and that is just the reality. Whatever we are not able to fund, LPIE funded programs will be impacted. And so we're looking ahead as what would be the least impact to our students. But if we do not have the dollars, we cannot support in the classroom. Hopefully you were able to participate. We launched our first ever survey, not first, in 6 years. And that was over 2 weeks in February. We look forward to presenting the results to our board in early April, and then we'll be publicizing those results. We had over 1,000 unique responses, so a really high turnout in our survey, and that will definitely impact our and sway our decisions moving forward, because we were very happy to hear from our community and stakeholders. And then just our process, we do our preliminary budget in May and then our final budget in September. Next slide, please. And last but not least, if you haven't seen, in the month of March, we have an $100,000 matching gift campaign, thanks to the generous donors in our community. I'm very excited to report, as of this morning, we're at $88,000. So we are incredibly close. So if you are able to donate this month, your donation will go twice as far. And then also we have, you know, phenomenal people that sit on our board that are Akalani's parents. We are always open for questions, calls, comments. Beth Goldberg is our new executive director, who is also on this call. I can't see you, Beth, but she is a parent in our community. I know she's here, she's waving. She's a parent in our community with kids as well. So between myself and Beth and Travis, John, we're all, you know, welcome questions, because it's a very complicated formula of how we're funded, but community support is crucial. And we are incredibly grateful to the Akalani's Parents Club for their partnership, and to the Don's community. So thank you, Travis, for giving us some time this morning. We really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, Danielle, you just captured so perfectly the essential nature of LPIE to our community, more specifically to our students, in receiving the high quality education that they deserve and that our community expects. To Dr. Nickerson, thanks for taking the time to walk us through the budget with clarity. I know when I first started as a principal, I was sitting in an LPIE meeting. There was a question about the budget. My response was something about buckets. I'm not really sure. So it can be confusing. And I think you just did such a nice job of really like bringing clarity to what that means and what that looks like for our community. And then again, to Beth and Danielle, your involvement in helping with LPIE. I know Danielle's been running around our campus, doing some campaign work, and really experiencing as an incoming president, wanting to know really what does LPIE touch on our campus. And when you walk the halls of Akalani's High School, you can literally at any point on our campus, you can stop and look and see LPIE's impact and the involvement that they make in the lives of our students. And for some reason, I too always default to the dissecting cats analogy with science. There's so much more that happens with our science labs and with the equipment that's necessary to do it. But it does create trauma. And so I'm not surprised that that student is now a trauma surgeon. So yeah, thanks for that analogy there, Danielle. Really appreciate it. I don't know, I didn't see any questions come in, but.
No, there aren't any open questions in the Q&A, Travis.
Okay, great.
Everyone did such a thorough job.
Yeah, well, great. Thank you. And to the LPIE panelists, you're welcome to stay on as we wrap up our Don's Dialogue here. I know if we need to I won't demote you to an attendee because that just feels insulting after the work you just did. But I'll let you make the decision if you want to, to demote yourself or not. So a huge thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Well, you hear that bell ringing, which tells me we've got 10 minutes left here together. And I just want to highlight a few things. I have a few quick announcements. So Mike, if you want to present the slides again. We've got some really fun things coming up here this month. We have our first ever virtual musical. It is our COVID Cabaret, and it is going to be on Thursday night. You can actually find on our website the link and information for how you can log on and see some of the work that the students have done to put together this sort of variety show musical experience, but it will be a lot of fun. And that is that's next week on Thursday. Also next week on Tuesday is our senior information night. And I'll share an update about this in our April Dawns dialogue. But we do have some plans to celebrate our graduating class of 2021. And we will be bringing back the famous and incredibly well-received car rally in Lafayette. So Ms. Powers will be sharing a little bit about that. But we also do have some plans for graduation, including plans for a senior ball, and we'll highlight more of what that looks like on Tuesday with our seniors and our senior parents. But we are thrilled to be offering something to our senior class. And then we have spring break, not next week, but the following week. So no school that week. And we this is a slide that's going to all students on Monday during Academy cohort. And we want to remind our students and our families to make sure that everyone's doing their part, adhering to our community compact on how we can all engage with the socially responsible guidelines so that we can minimize the spread of COVID and keep our schools open and our activities moving forward. We did have a few questions that were pre-submitted through to our parent club co-presidents. And yeah, Mike, you can just jump to that next slide there. Here's sort of the three questions that came up from our parent community. The first is about testing for classes. And I think perhaps there was some, I was not clear in my communication in the last Dawn's dialogue of the process for assessments during the hybrid schedule. What we continue to say is that the best practice is to not use all of your class time for in-person assessments, but to consider how to create parity among assessment experiences for our students who are staying fully remote and our students who are in person. When we use the word assessments, that has like a really wide gap of what we mean by that. There are quick formative assessments that teachers will do every day in class. That can be as simple as a 5-question multiple choice Google form that students do on their Chromebook. And it's really just informing the teacher if students understand a concept and they can move on to the next thing, or if teachers need to spend some time reteaching. Those can be graded, not graded. It can be immediate, or it can be like feedback for the teacher for the next class. It can also be in the form of like an exit ticket to make sure the teacher knows what to prepare for the next lesson. Or we can be talking about more summative assessments that might be end of unit, end of chapter, or a larger assessment that happens. The direction, there is not a mandate that no tests are given in person, but the professional development and the continued professional sort of best practice is at the discretion of the teacher to be aware that spending the limited time that teachers have with students in classroom should not be spent on just giving assessments. So our experience so far is that it's few and far between the assessments that are happening in class, but teachers can use their professional discernment on providing assessments, whether that's in person or remote. The other question that came up was around peer tutoring, whether that's remote or in person, and the answer is yes to both. So peer tutoring is continuing to try to be as robust as possible and capture and support as many students as possible. Mr. Plant sends an email every week to the students on how to take advantage of peer tutoring. So you can ask your your student about peer tutoring. You could do it around the family dinner table and quiz them on peer tutoring and if they know how to access peer tutoring support here at Akalani's. But they are providing some in-person options for students to engage and get some support, but they continue to provide Zoom support as well as needed. And then at the last minute, a question came in about the new CDC guidelines that now say schools can operate with a 3 feet distance instead of 6 feet distance in the classroom, and wondering if Akalani's will be making adjustments. We're aware of that guideline change, and there's a couple sort of like quick responses to that. One is our primary focus over this week and next week is launching our hybrid schedule. We have systems, we have structures in place. We want to do that well, and we want to support all of our students, whether they're in person or fully remote. We do have a part of that. So the CDC can make their sort of recommendations for what that looks like. And then we have to work at a local level to determine how we can move forward. Part of the negotiation with our collective bargaining members, which include our teachers union, has been on the original guidelines that came out from the state, and it does highlight a 6 feet requirement in the classroom. Those conversations are now happening on what does this mean for our students in our classes. We have very few, I think, Mr. Plant, you can back me up, but I think there's only like 4 or 5 students who have said that they want to go from fully remote to hybrid, and we've run into a capacity max in a classroom and we're not able to make that adjustment. We are working to try to get all of our students who want to be in person. And at this point, for the most part, we've been able to make that happen. So there's not necessarily a need to go through every classroom and adjust to those 3 feet. The work that we're doing to accommodate, that's included having teachers teach from different spaces that are larger. That includes some overflow areas for a few of our students, or setting up some plexiglass shields that still adhere to the CDC guidance. And then some potential schedule changes in the flopping of the A cohort or the B cohort to make that happen. We're committed, however, we do want our students to stay with their teachers, because we see that as it would be a deficit to completely change a student's schedule and teachers at this point in the year for their own learning. So we're holding to that, but we are doing everything we can to get every student that wants to be in person in person. So those were the questions that came in and some quick responses to that. It doesn't look like any other questions had come in over these last couple minutes. And so unless there's anything else, I want to wish you all a wonderful weekend. I know there was a lot of information in this Don's Dialogue. It will be posted and shared out in the Parent Club newsletter. You can find it on my YouTube page, which doesn't mean I have this, really robust YouTube page. It's just where I post my recorded videos and Don's Dialogue. So you can find it there, and we look forward to seeing you in a month at our next Don's Dialogue. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.